Talent in Cannabis is the FlowerHire podcast featuring candid conversations with leaders and professionals shaping the cannabis industry. Each episode goes beyond job titles to humanize executive careers, exploring real journeys, lessons learned, and what it truly takes to build and lead in cannabis. FlowerHire, Talent in Cannabis. Hi, this is David Belsky, your host of the Talent in Cannabis podcast. I'm sitting here with Gibran Washington, the CEO of Ethos. Thank you for joining today.
Dave, thanks so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure and an honor. It took too long for me to get here, but I'm glad we finally got together.
Well, you are the CEO of a multi-state vertical cannabis business, aka the worst job in the world. So thank you for carving out the time. I know you got a lot of folks coming at you all day. It looks like you're in one of your dispensaries today.
Yeah. I'm actually in our Allentown dispensary, man. I like to, kind of be in the space with the people a lot. So I'm in the grows a lot, the dispensaries a lot, just to truly get your pulse on the business and really try to be. I think my job is my job is just to remove obstacles that are in the staff's way. So being able to see what they are in real time is always good. And talking with the customers and the people kind of makes the job go by. And I will have to correct you. I don't think this is the worst job in America, but this is the most thankless job in America is being a CEO of a cannabis company or an MSO cannabis company. I can tell you that.
I mean, just how you started. I mean, the idea of going out to the shops, seeing how your customers are interacting with your staff. What can you do to unlock more performance in this store and seeing it with your own eyes? Like that's, and instinctually, it's your job to do that and be present, especially why is a certain store doing well and why are they not? And you start, going and understanding the qualities that really matter and what your team is doing in those stores and how that's impacting the business. So love that you're out in the wild. And I think thankless is, for the right person, being a cannabis executive is the best job because you're professionally unlocked. Every tool you have at your disposal, you're applying into a job that requires you to continuously learn and evolve your strategic approach. So if you thrive in ideation, it's a great industry to work in, provided you have a deep well of in the tank.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. I kind of like a little bit of the chaos. I mean, throughout my career, I've always been known as a person coming in and fix things and fix problems and make them better. So coming into this chaotic world of cannabis, it just fit my personality and my irrational self-confidence that I can do anything that my mother kept telling me when I was a kid. So I like to kind of put it on display and see what happens.
So tell me about Ethos Cannabis today, 2026. Tell me about Ethos Cannabis.
Yeah, Ethos Cannabis. We're an MSO, obviously, as you already stated a little earlier. We're in 3 states: Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Ohio. We're vertical in all 3 states. We like to say we are probably one of the more medical-facing or medical research cannabis companies in the space, and we thrive in education. We thrive in really understanding the medical efficacy of the plant and how to kind of apply that to our patients or customers. Because whether or not it's a medical state or a recreational state, we don't look at cannabis as a party drug. We look at it as some type of therapeutic effect you're looking for, whether that's sleep, anxiety, stress. We believe cannabis can help with those things. Maybe not solve those things, but a proper health and diet. We think cannabis is a medicine. We think that's probably the best approach for what cannabis is, and not portray it as this quote unquote recreational substance that's just frivolous and the highest THC wins. So I would say if you were looking at a cannabis company as a multi-state operator, we would call ourselves a craft cannabis company who's based in research and education.
Well, one thing I like about your, sort of store experience and how you describe it, you do cater to the recreational smoker that wants a high quality product because your brands are fire. On the flip side of it, if you ever go to an AU store, half the people that go in there in some areas are like 40 to 75 years old in there for definitely some type of true medical or wellness purpose. And so to recognize that as the roots of cannabis and why it's here and make sure that that's present in terms of how you train your staff and how they interact and communicate with your customers. it lands, and it seems so simple, but so many organizations, "Oh, we're a rec shop," and they talk about, THC percentage, and that's all that their staff knows, right? And, you attract a different type of employee,
Oh yeah,
in that type of place versus a place where you actually feel like you can help people. So,
yeah.
love
I
that.
mean, we try to build a culture around that and try to let your employees personify some of these behaviors that you kind of listed out, and we think that it's working. We feel as though, like you said earlier, our brands are fire and high quality, and even if it's you're an adult use or an AU state and you're using our products, we still feel there's probably a reason behind that, and we're still trying to address that reason. Even if it is not you're not a medical patient per se, you don't have a prescription. Most of us are trying to wind down or get away from something or release your mind or you have an ailment of some nature. So we made a product that we feel applies to every kind of format or applicable applicable application of what cannabis can be used for.
So, tell me about, uh, your career before becoming the CEO of Ethos, which is almost 4 years. I can't believe it. I mean,
Yeah, well, I've been at Ethos now going on 4 years. I've been CEO going on 3 years here coming up. So, well, I guess we'll start at Ethos and kind of work our way back. So I came in at Ethos from the food and beverage world, and I'll go into a little more where I started there. And then within that first year, I was able to make enough trouble or disrupt enough where I had the opportunity to be able to take over the organization. So I've been at Ethos going on 4 years, CEO three, vice president of retail, wholesale, supply chain before that. It's been an interesting journey while I've been in cannabis, but I think the journey leading up into it is probably what helped prepare me best. I started in the food and beverage business. My family has a lot of restaurants in the Southeast, so I'm used to a highly regulated space as most of our businesses are inside of actual airports. So I'm used to the regulated element of the space. I'm also used to small margins. And a lot of the bar interaction is very similar to the dispensary interaction in terms of that relationship that you have with the guest and the customer, and usually that the stronger that relationship, the better the narrative is around that person wanting to come back and talk about you and your business. So it kind of prepared me for a lot of what happened in cannabis, but it wasn't what I would call a direct linear approach. I left my family's business almost a decade ago now, and then went into Sodexo, which I was running the Delta Sky Clubs on the Eastern Seaboard before that. So I had that luxury airline kind of experience and running those Sky Clubs. And then from there, I went to work for a company called Purple Square Management, and this was a gentleman who was uber successful. He had a small business in 2015, about 15 restaurants, and as of today, he's had about over 400 businesses. And in that time frame, what I was doing with him was I was running his Dunkin' Donuts, Baskin Robbins, a couple of donut factories, Take Five oil changes, an eyelash studio. He also had some rent a centers, rent a wheels, and now he's into urgent care. So that experience really kind of made me put my entrepreneurship hat on, and I was working in multiple different industries all at once. I think we bought 30 restaurants during my time there, and I opened another 27 more from the ground up. So, that's less than 20 months. So that hyperactivity that we kind of went through, again, that chaos, again, helped prepare me for some of the steps that I've kind of gone through in cannabis. But my first experience with cannabis, I was probably about 10 years old, and I had this bifurcated experience with it because I had a brother I have older brothers, and if you have a younger brother, you understand that they bring you along with them, so that you can't tell on them when they're doing the wrong thing. So I was exposed to cannabis as a young kid and used cannabis throughout my athletic career. I played college basketball, and cannabis was therapeutic for me. CBD became therapeutic for me, and then my father also during that same time frame got cancer. And I watched a high-powered executive use cannabis as a therapeutic tool, and I had my brother who was using it as a recreational economic resource before it became completely legal. And unfortunately, I lost both of them. Lost my father to cancer, and I lost my brother to the war on drugs as he got caught up in that atmosphere. So my journey with cannabis has always been intertwined since I was young, and then the corporate experience as it came together. I felt that coming to cannabis and bringing both of these skill sets, which I didn't think a lot of cannabis executives had, which was this long history and understanding with cannabis, plus the corporate training, and kind of ended up here at Ethos, which I think is probably one of the best cannabis companies in the country. I'm not biased at all, but I do think that irregardless.
Well, if you guys were just more states, we'd all know that. Just
Very
but
true. Very
but
true.
your customers in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and the Northeast corridor definitely, have a better idea of that, and thank you for sharing your story and, you know, just, it's been part of your life, so having the opportunity to go apply your skills you learned in your career to this industry when it came to you, it felt correct, even
Did.
though it
A
was
little scary,
a little
a
scary.
lot
Well, and
scary,
and,
you know?
based on all the stuff you've done, like, this had to be, like, almost, like, less going on in in Ethos than some of the, you know, platforms, the family business plus the platforms in retail hospitality, that in manufacturing that you've done before. It's almost easier.
I say yes and no. I think in some regards, mentally better prepared probably than most to kind of deal with some of the hassle that goes in the industry. But I think the industry suffers from the lack of robust systems and processes and technological infrastructure that you would kind of see in some of these other established industries that we were kind of talking about before. Like the ability to be able to look at the business from a high level with a scalpel is a lot harder in cannabis because of the segmented nature and the state by state element that kind of exists in cannabis. So there are some definite benefits from my history in the past, but that also I get frustrated knowing that these things do exist outside of
Yeah.
cannabis and how much easier it would be if we had some of these tools and resources in our toolbox.
Well, just from a pace perspective, you definitely had operated, beyond the pace of it. It's just, unique
Yeah.
challenges to cannabis for sure, but you've been taking on unique challenges professionally in your life. So what advice do you have if, let's say, I'm an operational executive, I was working at Total Wine or Bevmo or even like a big box like Home Depot, and I got myself to point went over 100 stores, but I'm tired of working in that industry. I want to take my talents to cannabis. Or I'm coming from P&G, and I'm a brand manager and I understand brand. Like, what's your advice for anyone who's like a experienced professional to executive level from another industry, so considering saying, "Yeah, I want to work in cannabis."
I think that the first thing I would tell them is if this is your pathway to get rich fast, this is probably not the industry or the timing for that to happen. You either need to get in 2020, 2019, or maybe wait a few years if you want more stability. But if you have entrepreneurial skill set and drive and demeanor, I think that there's a lot of transferable skills from some of these established industries that you could use coming in. But if you're not ready to fly a plane while you're building it, this is probably not the industry for you. If you want certainty, if you want assurance that up is up and right is right, then this is also probably not the industry for you. You got to be ready to evolve and ready to be adaptable to everything that cannabis is going to kind of throw at you. But don't come in thinking this is a get rich quick scheme. Don't think that all of your toolbox from your previous world or your previous experience, you can just dust them off and just apply it to cannabis. Because a lot of times those individuals, especially, those executives that you named, have kind of done things to some of these larger MSO companies and ruined them. And thought that they could use some of those playbooks from CPG and traditional retail. And they would work here by just saying that, cannabis is simplistic. It's just weed, right? But they didn't understand the nuance that exists when you talk about a cannabis company. It's not a commodity like apples or oranges or anything
I
else
mean,
like that. There's a lot more nuances to that than just the THC level and everything else.
I agree. I agree. It comes down to like, are you a startup person? Are you ready for that? And are you taking a big bet on yourself as a 3 to 5 years? Are you ready to make less money than you would in a private equity backed CPG business? But also learn a ton. Are you ready to be humble again? Those things. But you sound like, you sound like a headhunter. You sound like you're used to explaining what it's like pitching this industry to other people. You must have recruited some really strong talent to join Ethos since you started, because you describe it really well.
Well, I think there's a double sided coin to that. So yes, I think I can verbally describe, what the industry is and what we do. And I try to use that skill set, that gift to be able to set that culture and be transparent with the people that do work for us here at Ethos, so they can understand the industry that they're in and take solace in the fact that what they're doing today, one, has never been done before, because this is a brand new industry and it's just as tough for you as it is for anybody else. And then the talent, I've been able to get some wonderful talent to come to Ethos, but I was blessed, with inheriting a group of individuals who were badass. From the different heads that we have in a lot of our departments, a lot of them have been here even before I got here. And they are really the backbone of what we do and why we do things. I'll take maybe some blame for all the things that go wrong and give them all the credit. But the only thing that I really did was set up the systems and the processes, create a culture that makes people want to come back and want to be a part of. And, I let the smarter people in the room be smart. And challenge the status quo. And I think that's been part of our success is taking what we have and enhancing it, making it better, and creating an environment where, I think 3.5 years is the average length of employment here at Ethos. And, I think most cannabis companies can't say that.
uh, Retaining the core team through a leadership transition, folks that predate you. I mean, coming in and building, having the platform to build credibility, taking over all commercial operations, and seeing how you could do to unlock growth, and all that stuff builds credibility. But you're right. It is unique to find a company that has 400 to 500 employees.
Yeah, 400 and change. So almost 500 people work here at Ethos. Brave women and men who kind of work for us and sign up
Very
every
great.
day to say, "Hey, I'm crazy as you are. I want to run down this road with you." So yeah, we're really lucky and blessed that, they do want to play in our sandbox and believe that they're working for a company that has the right mission, passion, and vision that they can align themselves with and trust them.
All right, I'm gonna ask you some questions just about like the market in general and your read on this stuff. So you talk about culture. Um, I've observed because I am fortunate enough to get to go travel and run into people like you in the wild from time to time. That like cannabis culture exists everywhere, but every state has a different feel to it, its own version of it. So talking about the culture in like Ohio stores with Pennsylvania and Mass, like versus your team versus how they, what have you noticed? How different it is on a state by state basis.
I think, from a global, not even a global standpoint, maybe a national standpoint, we think of cannabis as, 2009 or whatever it was when California made their transition. And sometimes we forget this miracle plant has been around for a long time. So the culture that has been created is unique to where you are. I grew up part of my life in Philadelphia, part of my life in Florida, and those cannabis cultures are very different. So when you think about the three states that we operate in, Ohio has a very rich legacy market. You think about the hills of Meigs County and the things that kind of came out of the Midwest historically, the genetic library and the quality and the understanding of the plant in Ohio is very similar to where I see like in Massachusetts, where again, you have a legacy market that has a different appreciation and understanding and acceptance, frankly, for what cannabis is and what cannabis has been. And in Pennsylvania, you kind of have something that's kind of in the middle of the two, very medically heavy, a lot more education with the patient base and the employee base as relates to what this plant is. Not saying there wasn't a historical significance to cannabis in Pennsylvania, but I may telling myself here on this podcast, but I never bought anything from Ohio and Florida that was shipped down, but I bought stuff from Massachusetts, Maine, Canada, and I damn sure didn't buy anything from Pennsylvania that was shipped down to Florida. So, when you think about the historical culture that exists in the states that we currently operate, the three that we operate in, Ohio and Mass has had this rich, long history with cannabis. Whether you want to talk about it or not, it's existed. And Pennsylvania is trying to catch up to some of what New York's culture is, what New Jersey's culture is. However, I will say that from a medical efficacy standpoint, Pennsylvania has the best medical and educational program across the board that any state in the union as relates to cannabis. The way that they take care of the patient, they want to educate the patients, the structure around the program, the fact that we have pharmacists in all of our stores to be able to ask questions to and to consult in real time with you, it creates a whole nother element of connection and purpose, I think, with the customer and with the employee about, the causation of what we do, how do we use something, and then seeing someone, really go through a process or a regimen that they come back and like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So, I think I see more of that in PA, but I see more of the legacy cannabis culture in those other two states.
When I started FlowerHire in California in 2017, there's a lot of money raised there in 2018 around this thesis that people in Ohio wanted West Coast brands, and blown, lit on fire, because that's not necessarily true. I mean, in Massachusetts, you find strains called Seaweed OG. Like people don't want California. Some people probably would love sun grown outdoor California weed, but people want local people, especially in states that have culture and history with it, right? Sounds like Pennsylvania's version is kind of like the sanitized medical MSO version of cannabis, versus the flavor of it you find in like a Ohio or a Michigan or a Massachusetts. But I get
Yeah,
what you're saying.
much richer tapestries in those other two states than in Pennsylvania. However, Pennsylvania's catching up. There's no knock on Pennsylvania and what it is, but historically, it's a
Okay, if
conservative,
you knock
somewhat
on
state.
I'm okay if you knock on Pennsylvania. I'm a Cowboys fan, so, um,
Well, I'm an Eagle, so I'm originally from Philly. So, I'm sorry that you're a Cowboys fan, man. And, we'll count our championships up later in the last 20 years. Let alone you guys like to bring up the 60s. But the last 20 years, we've owned you. And we are the most dominant team in the NFC East. So, hopefully you and Jerry's world can get some championships back that way.
I did end up Philadelphia's a lovely city, I wanted to hate it. I really did, but I had such a great time that I was in Philly twice last year. I actually went to the Link. I saw Metallica at the Link. I'm like, "This is like a gladiator arena in here."
Yeah,
It's like Limp Bizkit opened for him, and like the heavens started pouring rain during like break stuff, and I'm just sitting there like, "This is amazing." I hate that
that's
I'm
awesome.
enjoying myself so much right here.
Yeah.
But, okay. Is Ohio living up to its promise? I mean, you think about like 200 or so licenses, limited canopy size. To be a vertical operator in Ohio, like it seems like is it what it was advertised? Is it that great opportunity?
I think the funny words you use is advertise because we can't do advertising yet in Ohio. So we would love the opportunity to be able to advertise a little bit more. And those rules are coming along, and we should be able to have a little bit more freedom to be doing some of those things. But the market itself has been good. We love a limited license cap state. We don't feel that there should be a proliferation of licenses in any state. There should be equal opportunity or sufficient opportunity, I think, in every state for everyone to kind of have a shot at the apple. But Ohio did it the right way, unlike Mass kind of over licensed. So Ohio is definitely proving to be beneficial for us as an organization. We look forward to opening another store there this year, increasing our canopy size, either through increasing our footprint where we are or, leasing out space from someone else. But yeah, we're very optimistic about what Ohio can do. But I get nervous as, some of the canopies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just don't feel that, the larger you are, the better you are, one. And two, we also have seen all the other states that, just because you have 100,000, 200,000 square foot canopy doesn't mean anything. You still got to sell all of that product. And usually when that happens, you start getting overlap of genetics, and then you start the race to the bottom of discounting because people are trying to move inventory without it aging out. So
Well,
some
yeah.
concerns that I'm seeing, some of the writing on the wall, but in terms of a business working in Ohio and in Ohio, it's been good for us. We're excited about it. For all the reasons we've kind of talked about to this point. I mean, the tapestry there is so rich. We're really excited to be a part of it.
Good word. God, good word. Pennsylvania, they're going to legalize in Pennsylvania? Why is it so hard to get cannabis done in Pennsylvania? Like, I don't understand. Like, they've literally lost however much tax revenue to bordering states over the last three years and continue to. Uh,
Still don't have a hemp ban, so we're losing from there as well. There's no hemp ban in Pennsylvania either. So between the neighboring states, the recreational and the hemp ban, Pennsylvania's under siege. I think 3 quarters in a row, the active patient count has gone down. We've seen across the board, to talk to colleagues in the industry in Pennsylvania specifically, sales year over year continue to decline and discounting continues to become rampant. So we have a systematic issue or concern here in Pennsylvania right now as it relates to the sustainability of the business long term. So we would love for, Congress to local state legislators to act, but like any other legislative body, they're bifurcated. You have Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate. Democratic governor. So nobody wants to let the other person win. I think they all agree that this is something that would be good for the state, whether you're talking about from a medical standpoint or you're talking about from a revenue standpoint as it relates to tax dollars. So there really is no good logical answer. around why cannabis in Pennsylvania is not recreational yet, besides the fact that the U.S. Congress can't act right, neither can our local
No.
municipalities when it comes to writing laws and policies. Their agendas and their own egos sometimes get in the way of what's right for the constituents, in the states that they kind of represent. So it's the same thing here in Pennsylvania. But we do believe the budget gap that we continue to have a budget deficit in Pennsylvania. We continue to see that there is a potential solution. We can't fill the whole gap, although they may try to make us fill that whole gap. But we can help offset some of this deficit by turning on recreational cannabis, taxing that revenue, and creating more revenue for the state in turn.
Is the medical tax structure in Pennsylvania, is the state making money off it? You know, because like,
Yeah,
look at Kentucky where it's just straight sales tax and it's medical. There's not even an excise tax taken from it. Um, our taxes like
we have
they
both. We have
this
excise taxes from the grow level whenever we transport product out, and then we have sales tax on the transaction, on the sale itself. So yeah, I mean the revenue from it is creating quite a bit. I don't know the number right in front of me, but it's quite a lot that we're throwing into the coffers every year to kind of offset some of the things that may not be coming from raising taxes on people or raising property taxes, things of that nature. And we've been a good taxpayer and participant in the business in Pennsylvania.
and there's another 8 figures minimally of revenue annually sitting there if they were to go to adult use. So, um,
Minimum eight figures, yeah.
uh, so you've zigged when others have zagged. You closed your retail on 420, the biggest commercial holiday this industry has, the only one, maybe Green Wednesday now, is or now it's snow days in the Northeast, right? But 420, like, you're like, "Nope, we're not participating in this. We're gonna give this back to our staff to enjoy it." Yeah, but you gave your customers to other retailers, right? Or there is the 420 thing a myth?
I think it's well, one is 420. I think that needs to be with where we start. Is 420 a retail holiday? Is it a retail sales frenzy? Because if I was one of the PE guys who just came to cannabis because I liked edibles or something a few years ago, I maybe think it was. But I luckily bought cannabis before the traditional regulated market for a lot of years on 420. And there was never a deal or a discount with the guy I met in that Publix parking lot in a Ziploc bag when 420 came around. What he did have was good genetics and told me to enjoy my day. And then what I went to go do that day was hang out with friends and family and, watch the waves come against the shoreline or things of that nature. I wasn't trying to be in a retail frenzy. So we wanted to kind of recreate that legacy feeling for our staff first and foremost, because we wanted them to really reconnect to what they do. If we sold tobacco, if we sold alcohol, we would do tobacco and alcohol generated things. And we believe 420 culturally is something that our staff, if you're working in the industry, you should be able to celebrate and enjoy. Why have you in a high stress and intense environment where we're giving the store away at deep, deep discount and then creating a value proposition with the guests that is incorrect and inaccurate? Cannabis shouldn't be cheaper every year. You just like your alcohol and your tobacco, your eggs, your milk, everything else goes up, and cannabis continues to goes down. And we don't do enough as an industry to put our foot in the sand and say, guys, this isn't something that we should value at the cheapest, but value with quality, value with consistency. I mean, that should dictate the price point, not the fact that you have a oversized canopy and
Bunch
you
of
can't sell all
inventory to
this
move.
shitty weed that you grow.
Right. You're that's hey, you have a bunch of inventory you're trying to move on that day,
That's
and
all it is.
they're discounting that you're gonna
So,
lose money on anyway.
and then
Uh,
realistically, if I'm going to celebrate 420, do I want to really? I mean, how many people do we really lose? You really start thinking about it. It's a Monday. And most of the people who want to wake and bake, they probably came to us. We were open on the 19th. We're open on the 21st. So, if whatever you bought the 18th, 19th, 17th coming up to prepare for your 420, because just like I knew, all the customers knew 420 was coming. They had a chance to prepare. They had a chance to come with us, celebrate with us. And then, on 420, we were out in the communities doing softball games and community service activations and things of that nature to kind of be part of this community that we feel that we're helping create.
it's such a powerful message to your employees too. Really, I think, it's a wonder that your average tenure is 3.5 years. You're doing things like that. Why are the reasons they work in this industry? Yeah, to feel like they're helping people to do something cool, to be able to promote quality, and to appreciate and respect. the plant and giving them that freedom. It's, I love it. What's next for Ethos? You mentioned you opened another store in Ohio. That's great.
Appreciate it. Another store in Ohio. We're looking for acquisition opportunities in the states that we're in. Obviously, anything that's bordering us, we're looking to trying to get into, whether that's Kentucky, Virginia, New York, New Jersey. If the opportunity presents itself and is advantageous to our bottom line or accretive to our bottom line, we want to kind of participate in that. But we also understand that there is some strength in being a regional powerhouse, and that's kind of more of our focus instead of spreading out across the country with the infrastructure that may require. I mean, we also understand that there is a strength to running a business that is right size versus trying to run a business that's very unprofitable, although it's big. And we expect that those businesses that are not profitable because they are big, they will have distress assets sooner than later. They can't keep playing the I won't pay taxes, I won't pay interest game. And we hope to, acquire or grow through some more acquisitions through some of these distressed operators like the PharmaCans and others that we've kind of seen over the last, 18 months.
What are the top 3 reasons why M&A is doesn't work in this industry? Is it people thinking that they're gonna get lots of money for paper? That, you know, um, folks that have debt covenants that they have to repay on some of these assets that, they can't get someone to pay them for the asset, what, it takes to get out of it? Like, what
I
what
think an irrational valuation of what you think your business is, I think is probably the top one that we're seeing in the industry. And what further exacerbates that is, you'll have a Mill Street Capital or a Vireo Group come in and pay an absorbent price, which then kind of resets what the minimum is or what it should be for these businesses. If they were in a regular industry, they wouldn't be evaluated at 5, 6 times EBITDA, probably 1 or 2 times EBITDA based on the cash flow and their profitability. I think the debt covenants is one we would like to see more people take advantage of in terms of we would like to see more deals that are run through debt because debt kind of takes their ego out of it and they just want pennies on the dollar for what they can get back on their initial investment. And I think the last one is, the lack of true assets that are actually available left in cannabis. I think a lot of cannabis operators have done leasebacks, so they don't actually own anything that their property is on. A lot of them have a lot of UTPs, unrecognized tax positions, and I think that creates more consternation in an M&A transaction because you have no asset to loan against, and then you have this liability on your balance sheet that you're not sure how to evaluate it. And then you have a declining revenue base in every state. So, am I paying you on today's sales or am I paying you on next year's sales that could drop by 5 to 7%? And that usually is those sticking points that people are kind of caught up on in M&A. But as more people run out of cash and they can't actually operate their businesses, I think that will change. That tune will change over the next 12 months. Although we got rescheduled. If you pay real close attention, most of the larger MSOs and companies they already weren't paying taxes, so this doesn't help them at all. What it may do is open up the capital markets or allow for some uplisting to happen on Nasdaq and the stock exchanges. But uh, the
that's their
business model
if
isn't
you're
working.
publicly traded right now, that's your play. Like, that's
That's
your
your only play.
that's your to get to a more liquid exchange, it can be manipulated by a very small amount of, by no volume, right? And, um
But you still got to run a business though. And I think that's going to be the thing that's going to hurt them is operationally. And I'm not calling any public MSO in particular, but in general, most MSO organizations aren't run very well, operating in a way that I think that traditional institutional investors would like when they start looking under the curtain of how the business is actually operating and running.
I think that it's a mixed bag, is
I
is
agree.
my observation. There's some that, are being, gobbled up, and there's some that are, in the middle and you're wondering what's going on, and then there's some that are, like, actually doing things like generating cash
Yeah.
from
Like
their
a GTI.
operations
Big
and cutting
fans of
costs.
GTI and how they run
Yeah,
their business and what they do over there. Big fans of GTI.
yeah. What what do you, well, you have no turnover, so what do you look for when you hire? Are there certain parts of the business that you're or certain places, locations that you're trying to hire for right now?
Right now, there's nothing like I would call like a huge position. I mean, there's some, I wouldn't call any position small. There are some auxiliary positions that we want to think about adding this year to kind of help support. some of the team to make sure the bandwidth is where it needs to be. But, we're looking for the right person. I always tell people that, you bring your representative on your interview and then you show up on your first day. So even though you have a good interview process and it sounded great, whoever you hire, we really try to evaluate them in those first 30 days, like to make sure that they understand our culture. They want to play in our sandbox. They have the attitude that we are expecting, and the inquisitiveness to want to learn more about cannabis and the cannabis culture. And we'll teach you the skills. We'll teach you all the things you need to do to kind of operate. But if you don't have those first two intangibles, we believe, you can't be a product associate, you can't be an executive while working here at Ethos. But you don't necessarily have to have an exorbitant amount of cannabis experience or cannabis use. But you can't come in here not understanding this plant either. That is very specific and particular for us. Is if you don't like cannabis, this is not the place for you. If you're not going to be passionate about what we are doing here, this is also not going to be the place for you. So if you just want to come here and just get a job, this is not the company for you.
Yeah, you're not gonna last, and you're not gonna fit in. How are
No,
you
you,
preserving
you
your
won't fit in.
culture? Last question, is it the same hiring for proximity workers in cannabis versus hospitality or traditional retail? Any difference in terms of what you look for in cannabis versus, what you learned to look for when you're hiring all these, initial staffs to open up all these restaurants and facilities?
I would say food and beverage people are probably the perfect people for this industry. The servers and the bartenders of that industry, I love having them transfer over and bring that skill set with them to what we do, because they have that personalization, those touch points,
They can
and all the
speak.
things you kind of look for in a product associate. So we love food and beverage folk. Retail people as well. We enjoy them as well, but they're not as what you have to be in a restaurant, but they're just as good. So we like those kind of individuals kind of coming into the business. But yeah, I think the food and beverage employees, funny enough, they're either my employees again, or they're our best customers. So, on either side of the counter, I find my old world always coming back in.
Yeah. Funny how that works. Uh, Gibran, thank you. I enjoyed
Thank you, brother.
myself in this conversation. Thank you for sharing your story and your perspective on the industry as a whole. And anyone that's watches this is going to really enjoy themselves too. So have a
Well,
great
I
rest of
appreciate you,
your.
brother. Thanks for giving me the time and the platform, man. Let's talk soon, and I'll see you in a few weeks up in Chi-Town, man. Be good, brother.
Sounds good. Take it easy.